Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Urdu Seeking. I'm your host, Shireen. You'll have noticed we haven't been using our original format where we provide a short dialogue and explain that dialogue in great detail. We've delved into grammar in our previous episodes, and in today's episode, we're going to look at a poem. I recorded this episode with Mahavish, the host of Bachpan Ki Kahaniyan, several months back. It was right at the beginning of the epidemic, so I do apologize for the delay in releasing it. But because of the delay, I happened to listen to this episode several times while editing it. You'll see at a certain point, Mahavish and I come to a disagreement, and that's mainly because I hadn't fully understood the point she was making. I'm going to say the line that we disagreed on, and you'll likely need to listen to this part again after you hear us discussing it later in the episode. The line is, आओ जो मेरे घर में तो इज्जत है ये मेरी. I was arguing that in everyday conversation, one would never use such a line. It's way too formal. And in my mind, and remember, I live in the United States and am far removed from the South Asian culture. So I'm not really sure why I was so hell-bent on not believing what Mahavish was saying about the culture that she clearly is a part of, even today. Basically, it comes down to this. The line, आओ जो मेरे घर में तो इज्जत है ये मेरी, means it would be an honor if you were to come to my home. Now, if you think about the translation of this line, when was the last time you told someone that it would be an honor if they were to come to your home? Exactly my point. I bet you can't think of the last time you said this. It's just too formal. However, Mahavish says that it is still prevalent among the older generations, which makes complete sense. The other point that she was trying to make, which I kept interrupting her on, was this idea of izzat afzai. Izzat afzai, if I understand it correctly, is this idea of showing an excessive amount of respect to the person you're speaking to. This can take various forms, but one of the forms it takes is the words that you choose to speak to the person, right? So if you say to me, it would be an honor if you were to come to my home, that's an incredibly formal way to invite me to your home. But your decision to speak in such a way itself indicates to me that you hold me in high regard. The idea is that you wouldn't speak this way to just anyone. You'd speak it to only those whom you want to show utter respect to. That's the second point I think Mahavish was making. Anyway, let me introduce Mahavish for those of you who aren't yet familiar with her. So apart from being a writer, a photographer, and a podcaster, she's also a poet. Welcome back to Urdu Seeking, Mahavish.
Thank you, Shireen, and Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm happy to be back, and I'm excited that we'll be discussing Allama Muhammad Iqbal's nazm called Ek Makda aur Ek Makhi. Ek Makda aur Makhi means a spider and a fly. This is a well-known poem in the Urdu-speaking world, and it tries to teach children a lesson. I won't go too much into it, so you'll need to listen to the whole thing to learn what the moral of the story is.
Now, even though this is a poem for children, it's still quite difficult. It was for me anyway. If you're an absolute beginner, keep that in mind. I still think you'd benefit from listening because, well, we do an excellent job of translating and explaining it. But if you do find yourself becoming frustrated, be sure to go to the discussion section of our website and ask us any questions you may have related to this poem. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Allama Iqbal. I keep hearing his name, but to be honest, I know nothing about him except that he writes beautiful poetry that I don't understand. This poem was brought to my attention by another friend of mine. I was so excited to find something that had his name on it, but that I could actually work with. Still, I had a lot of help from my friend Anjum. So I know that the name alone helped convince you to join me again on another episode, despite your busy schedule. Do you want to share why you like Allama Iqbal so much, Mahavish?
Yeah, Shireen, I feel very lucky to have studied Iqbal at school as part of our Urdu curriculum. Iqbal was a great poet, philosopher, and was called the spiritual father of the nation and Mufakkir-e Pakistan, Mufakkir means a thinker. So he struggled all his life for Muslim awakening and awakening of self. His concept of khudi was one of the most significant contribution to human thought and the one which has always inspired me. Khudi basically means, if you don't get into the philosophy of it, khudi means ego or self. But Iqbal gave a unique sort of concept of khudi, which basically meant directive energy. He referred to khudi as directive energy, and what that means is that is one's will to aspire and achieve. I mean, it's of course it's something that really one needs to study to understand, but I just wanted to touch upon it because it is such a significant sort of contribution. So it is the emphasis on the enormous potential that every human possesses that only needs to be directed. So Iqbal poetry has a message of hope, and it has motivated me to keep exploring my own self and to challenge my boundaries. Inspired by Iqbal, the thematic focus of my own poetry is self-exploration, where I urge myself and my readers to dream, to unleash our inner strength, and to try to reach the state of self-actualization.
Wow, that's beautiful. He clearly had an impression on you. And I did know that you were a poet, but didn't realize that you shared it with others. I had gone on your website and didn't see anything there. Maybe I need to take a better look? I'd be interested in knowing, based on what little you know of my level of Urdu, do you think your poetry would be too difficult for me to understand? And you can completely be honest.
Regarding, when you say that you were not able to find it on my website, I think that's because I don't have it on my website, and I definitely need to do a better job at putting all of my work together at one place. But I do have it on my Facebook page. And no, I don't think that it should be difficult for you to understand, honestly, because I feel that I use quite simple Urdu.
Okay, all right. So then I'm going to definitely take a look, and maybe the next poem that we translate, that we explore, might be yours.
Sure.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and start our discussion of Ek Makra or Makhi. So my friend Travis, who's also interested in Urdu, shared some great information about where the word nazm comes from, what it means, and other words that derive from the root noon, zoi, and mim, the three letters that spell nazm. If you want to learn more about that, please be sure to download the free handout for this episode from our website. Also, the Instagram account, Taur Tarika, has a post which I'll repost to our Instagram account that also gives a good definition of what a nazm is. Be sure to check it out if you're on Instagram. So I did notice that there is definitely a rhythm in the way this nazm is being read by those who have posted videos of themselves reading it on YouTube. There's one video in particular, though, that I really like of a young girl reciting it. I'll post the link of that in the description. I highly recommend listening to it to get a sense of that rhythm. Plus, there's a cute illustration of the bee and the spider talking, and the poem is written out in Urdu.
One last thing you should know before we get started with the nazm: we have divided the entire poem into 6 parts and will devote 6 separate episodes to it. In this first part, we'll cover the first 8 lines of the nazm. We'll read 4 lines in Urdu, then we'll go straight into translating and discussing those lines. Then we'll read 4 more lines and translate and discuss them. So let's begin.
Here we go. एक दिन किसी मक्खी से ये कहने लगा मकड़ा, इस राह से होता है गुजर रोज तुम्हारा, लेकिन मेरी कुटिया की ना जागी कभी किस्मत, भूले से कभी तुमने यहाँ पाँव न रखा.
So the first line is, एक दिन किसी मक्खी से ये कहने लगा मकड़ा. एक दिन means one day. Kisi makhi means some fly. Kisi could mean some or none.
Right. So if I said, किसी चीज को हाथ नहीं लगाना. किसी चीज को हाथ नहीं लगाना. I'm saying, don't touch anything.
So, एक दिन किसी मक्खी से here means to, and ye means this. The verb in this sentence is कहने लगा. कहना is the infinitive form of this verb, and it means to say. And because the word laga is added to कहने laga, this means began telling. And who began telling? The makra, yani the spider. So एक दिन किसी मक्खी से ये कहने लगा मकड़ा means one day to some fly the spider began telling.
Notice how this doesn't sound natural in English. One day, to some fly, the spider began telling. Even in our previous episodes, the translations from Urdu to English don't sound natural. But here, it's important to note that the poem itself isn't written in a way that Urdu speakers speak. So even in Urdu, the structure isn't natural in this nazm.
Okay, the next line is, इस राह से होता है गुजर रोज तुम्हारा. इस राह से होता है गुजर रोज तुम्हारा. So this sentence is written in an even less natural way of speaking. Rah is another way of saying path or route. The more common way of saying path is rasta. Is rah means this path or this way. Let's look at the word guzar. The infinitive form of this verb is guzarna, and it means to pass or to cross. Roz means daily or every day. Tumhara means yours. Hota hai means it happens. So is rah se hota hai guzar roz tumhara means this path you cross daily. He means to say you take this route every day.
Then we have, लेकिन मेरी कुटिया की ना जागी कभी किस्मत. The word lekin means but. Meri means mine or my. Kutia is a word I hadn't heard before. It's translated as hut or cottage. This poem makes use of personification. That means that everything's being treated as if it were human. The two insects are talking, even though insects can't talk. And now we see that the spider lives in a kutia, a hut, like a human being. So keeping this idea of personification in mind, it just makes the nazm more lively, more fun.
Yes. Getting back to the line, लेकिन मेरी कुटिया की न जागी कभी किस्मत, the infinitive verb jagna means to wake up, to rise. Kabhi means sometimes, and when you have na before it, then it means never. So na jagi kabhi means never rose. And what never rose? Kismat.
So kismat never rose. I would most closely translate kismat as fate. And when you add khush or bad in front of it, then it changes the meaning slightly.
Exactly. So khush kismat means good fortune and bad kismat means bad fortune.
Right. So the makra is saying, Meri kutiya ki na jagi kabhi kismat. The fortune of his home never rose. He means to say that his home was never lucky enough. And we see in the next line what he means by lekin meri kutiya ki na jagi kabhi kismat.
Right. The next line is भूले से कभी तुमने यहाँ पाँव न रखा. भूले से कभी तुमने यहाँ पाँव न रखा. The common way to say to forget is bhulna. But when you have the word bhool followed by the postposition se, then it means by accident. But in this case, it's bhule se, and it also means by accident. Again, we see the word kabhi, which means sometimes. Yaha means here. paung means feet. The infinitive verb rakhna means to put. So bhule se kabhi tumne yahan paung na rakha means by accident you haven't put your feet here. So when we combine the two lines, they are लेकिन मेरी कुटिया की न जागी कभी किस्मत भूले से कभी तुमने यहाँ पाँव न रखा. So he's basically saying that my home hasn't been lucky enough that you would even accidentally step foot in it.
I think it is at this point that he begins the mind games with the fly. He's trying to get the fly to set foot on his web so it can get tangled in it and eaten. Let's move to the next 4 lines to see how far he gets.
All right, the next 4 lines are गैरों से ना मिलिए तो कोई बात नहीं है. गैरों से ना मिलिए तो कोई बात नहीं है. अपनों से मगर चाहिए यूं खिंच के ना रहना. अपनों से मगर चाहिए यूं खिंच के ना रहना. आओ जो मेरे घर में तो इज्जत है ये मेरी. आओ जो मेरे घर में तो इज्जत है ये मेरी. वो सामने सीढ़ी है जो मंजूर हो आना. वो सामने सीढ़ी है जो मंजूर हो आना. The word गैर.
So I'm gonna actually just pause here and
Okay.
just say a little something. So you guys might have noticed how Mavish repeats the lines, and so that's actually a way how poetry is actually recited. They often say it, one way, and then in another way it's repeated. So if you're familiar with Urdu poetry, this will seem second nature to you. But if it sounds weird to you, that like, why is she repeating it twice? It's a style of reciting poetry. And yeah, the more you understand Urdu poetry, the more it'll just sound amazing to you. I wish I could sound like her, but that's just the style of reciting poetry.
No, I think you're doing a great job, Shireen.
Thank you.
But yeah, you're right. This is like one of the ways. Okay, so the word ghair means foreign or stranger. So ghairon means strangers. The verb milna means to meet. And the phrase koi baat nahi means it's okay. It's no problem. So he's saying गैरों से न मिलिए तो कोई बात नहीं है, meaning it's no problem if you don't meet with strangers or those you don't know well. Then the next line is अपनों से मगर चाहिए यूं खिंच के न रहना. So the opposite of गैरों is अपनों, and अपनों refers to family and friends. अपनों से means with family and friends. Magar means but. It's like lekin. Chahiye means want, but here it means should. Apno se magar chahiye means but with friends you should.
Yun khich ke na rehna. Yun means like this. For example, if I said, Pura din yun baithe rahoge. Pura din yun baithe rahoge. Mavish, can you tell us what that means?
So it means, are you going to sit like this all day?
Exactly. So yun means like this. And khich, as I know it, means to pull or to stretch. Also, I'm used to pronouncing it a bit differently. I say khinch. So funny enough, it's stretched out. So they say khich and I say khinch. I think it's because of the context. When I looked up the word khinch with the noon, the N sound, it said that it was the same as kitch without the N sound. So, khinch, kitch. Khinch, kitch. I might be wrong, but I think we might be able to say that when talking about things being pulled or stretched, we can say khinch. But when talking about people, we say kitch, and it means to pull away from or remain distant. It implies that the makhi is acting distant or pulling away from the makra, even though she takes the same route and passes his hut daily. Here the makra is saying, apno se yun khich ke na rehna. He means, don't be like this. Don't be so distant from the ones you know,
from family and friends. Though this is not sound advice for current times, it is true and good advice in general. Okay, so back to the nazm. Rehna means to stay or to live. Again, because this is poetry, the sentence structure isn't a common one. Apno se magar chahiye यूं खिंच के ना रहना. If I wanted to say it in everyday Urdu, I'd say, अपनों से दूर ना रहना. Don't be far from those close to you. Don't be a stranger with family and friends.
Or you might also say, अपनों से दूर रहना अच्छी बात नहीं है. अपनों से दूर रहना अच्छी बात नहीं है, which just means it's not a good thing to stay far from your loved ones. Now let's move to the next line. आओ जो मेरे घर में. आओ means come. Ana is the infinitive form of the verb and it means to come. मेरे घर में means in my home. So he is saying, come to my home. The word jo here is functioning like the word if. So in the first line, he is saying, आओ जो मेरे घर में. If you come to my home, then he says, तो इज्जत है ये मेरी. तो means then. Izzat means respect.
I feel like I might get in trouble for saying this, but in my head, from my understanding, someone from a lower social class would say a sentence like this. So the line is, आओ जो मेरे घर में, तो इज्जत है ये मेरी. He means to say that such an amazing creature as yourself, and of course, if this were a conversation between humans, then it would translate to such a great person as yourself.
Such a well-known or wealthy person as yourself. Obviously, in this context, the makra is just trying to butter up the makhi. There is no class difference here. But if a person were to say this sentence, then he'd mean to say, if such an awesome person, like yourself, were to step foot into my humble home, that would raise my respect, whether it be self-respect or respect among society.
So I actually beg to differ here because I feel that it doesn't really mean that it would raise my self-respect. It is more like giving respect to the other person, you know. It's a way of respecting the other person by saying, Shiri, agar tum mere ghar mein aao to meri izzat hoegi. You know, it's not that actually meri izzat badh jayegi if you come to my place. I am giving you an honor actually. So I'm giving you an honor.
Oh, I see what you... So if I come to your home, you're saying... I see what you're saying. But I'm trying to also keep it in the context of him being manipulative, right? So this is between the makra and makhi kind of thing.
So exactly. So what he is trying is, he's basically, he's buttering him up.
Yes.
He's saying, oh, tum jate ho, you're not coming, right? Then he's calling him apna, main ghair to nahi hu, right? I'm like your friend, family, I'm a closed one. और अपनों से ऐसे नहीं खिंच के रहना चाहिए. तो मेरे घर आओ तो मेरी इज्जत होएगी ना. आओ जो मेरे घर में तो इज्जत है ये मेरी. So it's not like literal के इज्जत हो जाएगी. It's more like, you know, it's like a two-way thing that I'm inviting you and I'll be honored. It's just like I take you out for dinner, you say thank you, I say pleasure is mine.
True. Okay, yeah, no, I completely agree with what you're saying. And I feel like...
I just feel that it can offend somebody when you say lower social class, because somebody from that class might be listening to your podcast as well. So I just thought it from that angle.
No, and I do not mean to offend anybody. You're right.
And I know the intention, right? So that's the only way of that's the only reason why I suggested that.
Fair enough. But okay, but in real life though, do you think anyone would ever use this statement like, oh, आओ जो मेरे घर में तो इज्जत है? Like, obviously this is a funny way of, phrasing it.
Right. But we actually do use that. It'll be an honor. I mean, we do use that when we are talking to, for example, yeah. I mean,
in everyday language amongst your friends, agar aap mere ghar pe aaye.
I tell you what. So again, if you're talking about which generation are you talking about? If you're talking about our generation, then no. But then if I'm talking about my mom's generation, for example, if I'm talking to my uncle or my aunt, or then I might use it actually, because I know that there's that rak rakhao, that generation gap, that giving the other person that respect. आपके ताया चाचा, you'd say, I don't know, they बड़ी खुशी होगी, बड़ी, we use those fancy sort
see,
of
no, but badi khushi hogi. So okay, see, then later on I even go and say something like, if you wanted to say it in just everyday Urdu, I think I say something like badi khushi hogi, and that's that's more common.
Yeah, you say that what he or she is saying is, I would feel very happy if you were to come to my home.
Exactly.
But then but I think that what I don't agree with is this, whether it's self-respect or respect among society. This is one line that I don't agree with, because it's more like a fancier way of if I were to give someone respect, then I would use that fancy those fancy lines.
But who would you give such
बड़ी इज्जत अफजाई की, ये बहुत ये यूज करते हैं लोग, वो हम उसके घर गए, बड़ी इज्जत अफजाई की उसने, या बड़ी इज्जत अफजाई हुई हमारी, इस तरह की चीजें. So you do use those fancy sort of things, but you would only do with people जिनकी आप respect करते हैं. So he is, what is in this context, he is using all those, he's buttering makhi up, and he's using like, from flattery to tum mere kareeb ho aur meri izzat afzai hogi. Another way, may I tell you, how you say like aap bade hain, hum to chote log hain, इस तरह की बात भी कई लोग करते हैं. Again, you're not saying that you are actually small and the other person is big. You're just giving the other person respect. आपके जैसा, आप जैसे बड़े लोग आए, बड़ी इज्जत अफजाई हुई हमारी.
But
so again, you are host.
But there is a class right there, though. That's me trying to let you know that I feel that there's an intent there, that I intend to let you know that I think you're in a higher social class than me, or better than me somehow, or
not a higher social class, Shinin. It's a higher class in terms of respect.
Huh. Okay.
I think or maybe that's how we have always used it. So I only see it in that context. So I don't know. Yeah, but
no, and it's very possible because because I've been so far removed from our culture kind of thing. I'm not used to this language, and plus I feel like this is old-timey, it's an old tradition.
But I think basically saying that if you come to my home, I would be very happy. I will feel honored.
Have you guys heard such lines from your parents? What do your parents or other adults around you that speak Urdu, what do they say when they invite others to their home? Please visit our website and leave your responses in the discussion section, and feel free to let us know any of your thoughts on this concept of izzat afzai.
Getting back to our nazm, then the next line is वो सामने सीढ़ी है. वो सामने सीढ़ी है. This happens to be a sentence you can use in everyday conversation. वो सामने means they're in front of you. सीढ़ी means stairs. It can also mean ladder. So वो सामने सीढ़ी है means there in front of you is the ladder.
I imagine a spider web, so a ladder makes more sense to me than stairs.
We're talking about a fly here, Shiri. It doesn't need a सीढ़ी of any kind.
Good point.
Okay, so on to our final line. जो मंजूर हो आना. So the later part of the last line is जो मंजूर हो आना. Earlier we said that जो means if and manzoor means to be in agreement with.
Right. So if I say to my mom, if you cook for me for a week, I'll wash all the dishes. Manzoor hai? I'm asking, do you agree? Like, do we have a deal? And she can respond in the same way. She can say, manzoor hai, or mujhe manzoor hai, meaning I agree, or we have a deal.
Yes, that's one way to use the word manzoor. And similarly, here he is saying jo manzoor ho aana. If you recall, aana means to come. With jo manzoor ho aana, he's saying if you agree, come. He's trying to be nonchalant, trying to show that he doesn't care either way. If you feel like it, come. It's whatever you want.
Exactly. The manipulation continues. Because I've read this poem so many times, now the phrase jo manzoor ho aana doesn't sound unnatural anymore. But when I initially heard it, my brain kept saying that it would have been better if Allama Iqbal had written jab manzoor ho aana. Jab means when. So then the Makra would be saying, whenever you agree, whenever you are ready, come. But jab manzoor ho aana is everyday Urdu, and that just wouldn't be right for a nazm written by Allama Iqbal. All right, well, that does it for part 1 of this nazm. Thank you very much for listening.
Please be sure to visit our website to download the free handout for this episode. This one's going to be a handout you'll definitely want to get due to the new vocabulary and the more advanced level. Did we mention that it's free? Be sure to also subscribe so you're never left wondering when the next part will come. If you subscribe to the podcast, it'll automatically download the next episode as soon as we release it. And if you're enjoying listening to this podcast, please consider leaving us a review on iTunes.
Thank you, Shireen. Stay safe. Apna khayal rakhna. Phir milenge. Khuda Hafiz.